Hello, everyone, and welcome to Postpartum in the Raw, where we have real conversations with real parents in a really raw way. Welcoming today, we have Gabi Garland. Welcome, 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 Gabi. We are so excited to have you here, and I'm really excited for you to share with us your story. But before we get into that, is there anything you'd like to share with our audience about who you are?
Absolutely.
Before we delve into your postpartum story.
Before I tell you all the tea about my crazy life. So I'm originally from New Mexico. I am NLP, Reiki, and hypnosis certified. I focus more on trauma in the hypnosis space, and all of the soul work that I do, it really revolves mostly around trauma. I am a very busy mom. I have an agency that is a healing agency as well as a podcast production company. And so we're busy over here a lot.
Yes. So you're definitely a working mom.
Yes.
Right. And let's just hop into it. So
Okay.
Before we get into the actual story, I want to know, is there any expectation or any conversation and preparation that you had ahead of time? What did you think postpartum was going to be like for you versus how it actually was?
I don't think I even thought about it, to be honest with you. And one of the conversations that was pretty deep in therapy when my husband and I went after we had that loss was that managing the expectations and the story that we're allowing for other people to kind of put on us, because there was I didn't even really want to tell everybody that I had lost the baby that we lost right after we got married at 16 weeks, because when I just was like, I don't really want to even have that conversation. But because I own a business and because I am so interactive on social media, I've taken people along on my journey of my life of getting married at almost 40 and, finding love late, what most people consider later in life. And I had a daughter as a product of domestic violence at a very young age. And so getting married, being very happy, getting pregnant, really excited, I tell everybody, I was checking every box that the world tells us as women we're supposed to do before we have children. And I didn't do that the first time around. And I waited almost 20 years until I had a baby with my husband. And then we lost the first baby at 16 weeks. And then we got pregnant again fairly soon after that. And that baby has several heart defects. So it has been quite a road postpartum and in between the loss and the pregnancy and then the diagnosis when I was 20 weeks pregnant with him.
So let's rewind just a bit. You experienced a 16-week loss.
Yeah.
Which is, you were significantly far along. So I'm guessing that there were some things physically that you experienced as a result of that. If you're comfortable, could you share with us maybe what that immediate postpartum looked like after that loss?
I was spotting early in the pregnancy, and it was scary in the beginning, but it was very light spotting. I didn't spot with my daughter, so I didn't really have frame of reference. So I went to the hospital, and it was no, your levels are up high enough. You haven't lost the pregnancy, and it was early. So, you
can go ahead.
Okay. So the doctors were there's not anything we can do. We just kind of let nature take its course is essentially what they told me, because there's no way to do anything if you are going to be experience a miscarriage. So we kind of kept it rolling. That particular pregnancy, my husband kind of says, he's you weren't pregnant for all those years. Your body has to get used to doing this all over again. And so I was really, really, really sick. I never got diagnosed with whatever that sickness is where you throw up all the time, but I'm sure there we go. Guarantee I had it, because I would brush my teeth, throw up, eat my cereal, throw up. Didn't matter what I ate, I threw up. If I moved around too much, I threw up. It was miserable. And as a result, I was pretty sedentary, and I ended up getting a blood clot in my leg, which I thought it was just a leg cramp because I'd never had a blood clot. But we went into the hospital, and it wasn't a DVT, which is, I guess, the more serious one. But within days from going in about the blood clot, I actually had the pregnancy loss. So the couple days before that, I just, I'm really intuitive. And so there was this, I downloaded this app that you could hear the baby's heart, because I was kind of being a little bit psycho. And I was just something just doesn't feel right. And that morning I got in the shower and I was like, all right, baby, you just have to grow, just hang out in there. We got you. Like, and I remember just having that conversation, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that the miscarriage was just a couple of hours past that time, because I just didn't feel good that day. My husband actually, I was supposed to make dinner and I called him. I was like, I just don't feel well. So I picked up dinner. I had a little bit of food and I went laid back in the bed. And then the miscarriage happened there at home.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, did your body go through like adjustment with like the hormones? And because I know you were saying you weren't feeling well when that particular portion happened.
Yeah.
Did you experience any sort of depression or anxiety? Or, I mean, I feel like that's like a given, but I want for you to share from your perspective what that.
Absolutely. It was such a weird transition. So I lost the sac or whatever they call it at home in the toilet. And so when I went into the hospital, they were doing the ultrasound to see like if there was a baby still there. Like I knew at that point, I didn't look in the toilet. I didn't know, but there was too much blood in my mind, like for this not to happen. Like there was a lot of blood and I was like, the baby's not going to survive this. And so I kind of intuitively knew. And then they did an ultrasound and the girl, people don't always have a poker face. And so I'm watching her do this ultrasound and she's younger. She's like not holding it together. You can tell she knows that like this baby is not here. And I am just bawling the whole time. And then she brings in her supervisor who was very visibly pregnant. So it was like, on top of being traumatized from losing my baby, I'm literally watching a woman check for my baby that doesn't exist with a baby in her tummy. And I was so devastated and so angry because I was like, this is like, I'm getting kicked in the teeth again after what I already know they're going to tell me when we get out of here. So it was absolutely brutal.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. So then, moving forward, because obviously you did share something about, you did find out later you had a medical diagnosis on the loss.
Yeah.
What was that?
So it's a couple of folds. So they believe that the blood clot is probably why I lost that pregnancy, but I took the ultrasound pictures to a specialist because I just was having all these dreams about the baby look like, and I needed some sort of peace for my mind, I think. So I took it to a specialist and found out that the baby had anencephaly. He also did not have arms or legs past his knees or elbows. So for those of you that don't know what anencephaly is, your skull just essentially doesn't grow properly to cover the brain. So babies that are born with anencephaly don't live very long if they do make it to full term, because even with a C-section, it's devastating for them because they don't have the protection in their brain. And so as a result, when we decided, okay, we're going to try again, I went and saw a doctor after the miscarriage, and she was like, I think it was just kind of a fluke. You're, geriatric, they tell you all the really dismissive, like old lady things to tell you about how old you are to be having a baby. And then she didn't say anything about doing blood thinners, and we were getting ready to go to New York for my husband's birthday. And I was like, I feel like I want to go to another doctor. So I asked some people on Facebook, and I was just like, which doctor should I pick? And I ended up picking a literal angel. And in our first appointment, he's like, I'm going to be really conservative for you and put you on blood thinners. And I hate needles, absolutely hate them. He's like, but I feel like that will give you and this baby the best possible chance because of the blood thinner. And that decision literally saved our son's life.
Wow. And so the needle, was there a medication that he recommended and prescribed to help maintain? Because I know sometimes folks get progesterone shots or something like that to help their body maintain a pregnancy. Was it something like that, or?
No, it was blood thinners. So it was Levinox. I had 2 shots per day of blood thinner. And it was brutal. A lot, do not recommend. It was horrific. But the thing that I think that I had to look at when it all kind of came out is that baby Liddy would not be as healthy as he was. Like, had we not been on blood thinners with the diagnosis that he had for his heart, he would have been a much more complicated heart child with a whole lot of things that didn't develop properly, because typically heart babies do not get sufficient blood flow in utero, and it's like a kind of like a spiral effect. So all these other organs don't get the proper blood flow. And so those start having issues as well. And as a result of him being really precautious and putting me on blood thinners, baby Lenny literally just has his heart issue. He doesn't have kidney, lung, any of the other organ issues at all, which is pretty untypical and pretty miraculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how are you emotionally trying again and moving forward with your husband and trying for another baby? What was that experience like for you?
I gained probably 25 pounds between, we lost the baby. Oddly enough, we lost the baby March 23rd, 2018, and his brother was born March the 23rd, 2019, a year to the day, which is wild. But so we got pregnant again in July. So from March to July, I gained 25 pounds. I was deep in depression. I was eating peanut butter cups like it was my job. Like I was really struggling. And my husband was working a lot of hours. So I was home by myself a lot. I was kind of trying to get a business off the ground, but it wasn't really looking like I wanted to do. And so it was just a really dark time for me. It also is the time that experience really cracked open all of my mediumship things. So I had always been a medium. I'd always had that gift, but it made it tenfold strong once that loss happened. And so it really put me on a journey of like, how do I heal? How do I feel better? And that's where I started finding all these different modalities as alternatives to heal and just to feel better myself. And it just kind of went from there.
Wow. So then when you had, your subsequent child was a son, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what was your postpartum experience like with that?
With him? I don't think that I even, like a girlfriend and I had this conversation recently. We've even done this, a couple episodes on postpartum on the Resilient Heart. But I don't think I even really understood that it took me almost 2 years to get out of some level of postpartum depression. We had his diagnosis at 20 weeks that he had tricuspid atresia. It's a congenital heart defect. And so he would need surgery shortly after birth in a series of 3 for him to have a long, beautiful life. And so it was a very postpartum. I went into we had to do all these different appointments, and it was like nonstop. It felt like I was living at the doctor's office, just making a plan for when he was born so that he would be in the best place possible to help him, whatever happened when he was born, because they know the anatomy, but you also don't know those things that you can't necessarily see or whatever surprises are going to happen. So they had a schedule for a C-section at his heart hospital, and on the 27th of March. And he decided on Saturday morning on March the 23rd that it was his time to shine. So he just popped up. It ended up, we didn't get to go. We went down in the middle of the night because I was like, I'm pretty sure this is happening. And we ended up being an emergency C-section. The blessing was that I got to have my doctor, who had been a literal angel the entire pregnancy. And I would not have been able to have him because he didn't have rights at the hospital that the baby would need it to be born at. So that was really wonderful. He actually came in and he told the nurses, he's like, she's been through absolute hell this pregnancy. He's like, I'm going to come in. So I'm going to come in and help her. And I was just like, oh, a familiar face. This sucks. And I had, very, very severe preeclampsia. So they wouldn't transfer me to his hospital because my husband still won't tell me what my heart rate was, but it was like stroke level. It was pretty rough. And so then we went in, had him, they whisked him away. And then that was on Saturday, and I didn't get to see him again until Monday because they shipped him to his hospital within hours of being born.
What was your postpartum support? What did that look like? Did you have a community of folks around you? Was it just you and your husband, your daughter? What when you're thinking about that entire season, right? Because you're talking about a year to the day. Mm-hmm. And so within that 2-year period, what did your community of support look like?
Obviously my husband. My daughter was obviously wonderful. I have a couple of really close friends that were absolutely monumental in just being there. One of my best friends and I, our babies are actually 10 days apart. So we were pregnant at the same time. And so getting to go through that experience with her, and texting in the middle of the night, and then our babies are born and we're nursing in the middle of the night. We're texting each other memes and just a bunch of mess. And so I did have a ton of support, but I definitely was probably not honest with them or myself at how hard I was struggling, because there was so much we had to do for the baby. So when he was born, we finally got him on Monday. He ended up back in the hospital with hypothermia 3 days later. And then he had a heart surgery at 3 weeks and another at 5 months. So it felt like we lived in the hospital for the first 6 months of his life from some appointment or some emergency. And so I don't think I even dealt with it for quite some time, because there just wasn't the capacity. I had to take care of him. I was nursing all those pieces, and there just wasn't the time to give that space.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that's a unique positioning. When you have a child that is in the hospital, whether it's the NICU or whether there's some other ailment or concern that's taking place. And I guess I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You feel like the onset of your postpartum was delayed because you were so focused on him. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, I feel like it was. I'm sure it was there, but I'm really good at compartmentalizing when I need to kind of shut down. It's a trauma response that I'm aware of, that I adapted because of some things that happened to me when I was a little bit younger, but I didn't really do much for it. And once I realized that I was kind of starting to crawl out of it or feel a little bit better, I ended up starting to look for other healing modalities, and that's how I found breath work and Reiki and NLP and hypnosis, and just kind of started piecing through the mess to try to get myself back together.
Yeah. So looking at the experiences now, I don't know, how many years out are you from your son?
He was born March of 2019, so he just turned 4.
4. Okay. So looking back with, sometimes they say hindsight is 2020. What are some things that you would have implemented or even done differently to help, feel better supported through both of those postpartum experiences?
It's kind of poetic in a lot of ways, because when I launched my podcast in August of 2020, I unknowingly was creating the community that would hold me up in my life. Like some of them are clients, some of them become best friends. But I think because I delayed my own healing by not telling anybody how badly I was struggling. And then I created a community to help heal. And I have healed in many ways alongside the women that I get to work with. And so if there's a bit of advice that I could give somebody, is whatever feels like, I think so often we think healing's supposed to look like just going to therapy or just taking an antidepressant, just doing meditation, just go ground yourself. Like there's a million ways to heal. But I think the most important thing that women need to remember, especially if they're deep in that hole, is start looking for every answer you can find and see what works, because different modalities have healed different parts of my heart over the last 4 or 5 years. And so getting to learn those and to see what all these different modalities can do, I just tell women, like, search for the right person for you to sit and unpack those things in therapy, whatever that looks like. It's essential. And I made it take longer than it needed to take.
Yeah. And I think that, that's an important point, right? Because often when we think about therapy, we think about talk therapy. I know something that was very helpful for me along my journey was somatic therapy, which was movement, dance, and not just dancing, like being in the club, but actual intentional therapeutic movement and identifying where the traumas were in my body, and having a really, I had the amazing blessing. My therapist she had been a professional dancer, like in her youth and through her young adults. And so she was actually able to bring those components, but then she's, a highly credentialed somatic therapist. And it was just so tremendous, the impact that made. And I just always encourage people to research, to pray, to meditate, to move your body, to cry. Sometimes we just need to just cry a few buckets and be okay with it, in a safe place. And that it could just be so that refreshing, and that release can be so healing.
Absolutely.
And so your son is 4 and you're still dealing with his diagnosis and life. Do you feel that and I've heard this just in conversation with other parents whose children have like either some sort of serious condition or injury in childhood that creates some other condition. Do you feel that when something happens with your son, like maybe there's some sort of crisis that happens, do you feel thrown back into that cycle at all? And I know that you're doing the healing work, and I'm sure it's a part of your everyday life, but for the parent that has a child with a serious diagnosis, I know that there's sometimes a struggle of anytime something happens, or even when everything is okay, they feel like the ball is going to drop at any moment, and they're like kind of on the edge and thrust back into this loop of emotion or depression or anxiety. So is that something that you experience? And if so, like if you could just share a
Absolutely.
little bit.
I think the thing that is the most important to share is that it's going to go, you're going to, on a daily basis, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely killing it. I got all the appointments done. Like it's such a constant scheduling life for all of the things that he needs. And he just had which should be his final surgery in January of this year. And I was pretty sure I was handling it really well. We planned ahead, which we didn't do the first couple of times because we didn't know what we were going to expect. And so those first two surgeries, I was home. I was at the hospital with him by myself and going back and forth to a host house that a girlfriend owns that takes care of families that have children in the hospital, which is like the most incredible organization. And this third surgery, my husband went down with me. We planned everything out. We had a whole structure to it, and there was lots of support. And so I didn't feel that isolation that I felt the previous time. But I will say that like once January was over and he was home and everything was great, we had some other news that came as far as his diagnosis is and just kind of what life looks like for a child that's been through more in the first 4 years of life than most people go into in a lifetime, and navigating that. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I know all the things I need to do. I have been doing all of those things, and my weight has gone up, and I'm stressed, and I can't stop crying, and I went and sought help and got on an antidepressant that I've been on for the last couple of weeks. And I think there's such a stigma, and I think I went when I was like, okay, it's time. Like we got to get it back together because none of the things were working. And I think there's a reminder that needs to happen because you can do all those things. I know all those things. I teach them every day. I have women that I work with on a daily basis, helping them navigate stressful situations in life. And sometimes you need help too. And that was such a reminder for me because almost immediately within a week, I was like, I feel better. I'm back on my routine. I onboarded when, like it got me back together, and it's not something I want to stay on forever, but I knew like, okay, we got to get some extra help than we were doing prior.
Yeah. And I love that balance because, especially if you are not just a parent that's in a nurturing position, but often if you are a practitioner of most wellness or healing modalities, you have a level of nurturing and care to yourself. And a reason that you got into those or sought out those modalities to begin with. And so sometimes we just pour and pour and pour and pour. And no, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I know the things, and you keep telling yourself how you know the things, but sometimes you don't even have the capacity to implement the things that you know how to do. And I love that, that level of self-awareness, because I do think self-awareness is super important when it comes to healing and understanding timing of when you need support and when to ask for help and all those things. So I love that you said that, and that you're like, hey, this is not something I'm going to do forever, but I absolutely need this, or else my whole world is just going to be like crazy for a bit if I don't get it together. And so thank you for highlighting that piece. And so as we are wrapping up, I want to go ahead and give you, actually, before we do that, what's one piece of advice, not just for parents that might be in your particular position, but for any person that might be listening that is maybe a first-time parent and they don't know at all what to expect from their postpartum experience? What's a piece of advice that you would give them?
I think the most important thing that you can do postpartum or prior to even having a baby. I was my first daughter. I had her at 21 years old. So I was a whole big mess for a really long time. And I think the most important thing that you can do and the biggest gift that you can give your babies is to heal from your own stuff so that you are able to help them, because I think it doesn't happen enough. And then we end up spilling our messy onto our children, which I can attest to doing to my 21-year-old daughter. And so I think whether it's postpartum, whether it's prior to getting, deciding, okay, I want to start trying to have a baby, like get in whatever place you need to be to start working on your healing so that you bring a baby into the world in an environment that is more peaceful, where you are at peace. Because the thing that I know about my son, and like we joke, we call him, like a really good friend calls him Baby Jedi, or Baby Yoda is what he calls him, because he's very intuitive, such a medium, talks to his brother that I lost before he was born. And there is such a blessing for him to get a mom that is way more present than the mom he would have gotten if I wouldn't have done this work. And they deserve that. And you deserve that, because it brings so much more peace and awareness and grace for other people, just layers of a lot better environment than they would potentially get if you don't do it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And for those, if people want to connect with you, or how can they find you, or if you could share a little bit about that.
I'm most active on Instagram or Facebook. Just Gabi Garland, Gabi Garland. I love to meet new people. I love to connect with other ladies and have opportunities to share stories, and just the community piece of social media is my absolute favorite piece. And so, absolutely. You can add me and say hi and tell me all the tea, because I end up, people will listen to a podcast and then they will message me directly from being a guest or an episode that I went on Resilient Heart. And that community of being a safe space for women to share, because I was honest about my own story, is a place that I do not take for granted. And I feel it's such a blessing and such an honor to get to do. So I would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing so beautifully your story. I think it's so important, because we all have different experiences. And with each child, we have different experiences. So you have your older daughter, you have your two sons, and every experience was just so different. And I just really am appreciative of you highlighting your experience of loss and postpartum after loss, and stepping out and doing it again, and engaging in the way that you have with your son. And so we appreciate you for joining us, Gabi. For all of those who are watching and listening, thank you for watching another episode, and we will talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.